clips about that.
Tally-ho!
His tally-ho became a rally cry.
PBS Kids helps my students learn more about the world around them.
Tally-ho, butterfly! We did it! Yay!
You're watching New England Public Media on WGBY Springfield.
This winter, it's a can't-miss season.
Come on, then. What are you waiting for?
With all creatures great and small.
And who is this?
James Hedrick, Mr. Farnham's new assistant.
And Dr. Henry Louis Gates Jr.'s The Black Church.
The role of music in the Black Church is everything.
Then this spring, discover Ken Burns and Lynn Novick's Hemingway.
The man is much more interesting than the myth.
And Philly D.A.
My guys don't trust you. What am I to tell them?
I suggest you don't shoot unarmed people in the back.
All this and more.
Coming up, stories we're connecting you with tonight. The presidential inauguration is just 5 days away. What can we expect as the transfer of power takes place?
There may, in fact, be members of the Republican United States Senate who are thinking about, here's our opportunity, here's our chance.
Exploring the diversity of the region through portraiture.
I think more than ever, art will always be responsible for highlighting our times and kind of marking our times.
And assistance for communities hit hard by the COVID-19 pandemic.
Wearing a mask, it's washing your hands consistently. It's, if you're feeling that you're sick and you have some symptoms, getting tested.
Details on those stories and more up next on Connecting Point.
Support for Connecting Point is provided by our contributing viewers.
Good evening, and thanks for joining us for Connecting Point. I'm ZYDALIS BAUER. On January 20th, Joe Biden will be inaugurated as the 46th President of the United States, and security for the event will be unlike any in modern American history following last week's riot and siege at the U.S. Capitol. Biden takes office amidst a turbulent transition from the Trump administration and a COVID-19 pandemic that gets worse by the day. So what can we expect on Inauguration Day? And will President Biden be able to unify the country and move it forward in a more bipartisan way? Connecting Point's Ray Hershel spoke with political consultants Tony Cignoli and Ryan McCollum for their perspective on where the country is headed during a Biden administration and what the future holds for Donald Trump and the Republican Party.
It's an important opportunity. It's a necessary opportunity for Joe Biden to make it very, very clear what's going to happen under him as president of the United States. The difference between himself and Donald Trump, laying out what the agenda is going to be, but I believe it's already begun. The fact that Joe Biden spent 25 minutes on national media, national television, etc., on Thursday of this week, laying out in that 25 minutes, here's the initial aspect of what the Biden administration, the Biden-Harris administration is going to do is important. Laying out that $1.9 trillion in expenditure to deal with job one, war one, which is COVID. I think he's already begun. It's messaging, Ray. This inaugural, it's all about messaging. It's not the pageantry and the pomp, much of which is gone because of COVID. It's really that massive message to all of America.
And Ryan, as you look forward to the inauguration speech, and Tony talks about this message, what would you like the president-elect to say on Inauguration Day in terms of trying to bring the country together and heal this country, which has been so divided?
Yeah, I mean, it's an overused term around this time, and it's unity. And we're hearing it from both sides of the aisle, which is great. After what happened, there are some folks on the Republican side who are talking about unity. And the cliche, I'm not the president for the blue America or the red America, I'm the president for all of America. We're going to hear a lot of that. But it is really important, back to the security piece, that nothing happens. We can't afford to have anything happen. My fear of having a constant insurgency in our country of folks who want to change our government is a fear. And so my first hope is that nothing happens while Biden's trying to make his speech.
And Ryan, as Tony alluded to, President-elect Biden has unveiled his $1.9 trillion economic stimulus package, including $1,400 checks for most Americans. Wanted to get your thoughts on whether or not you feel this entire package is going to be approved by Congress now.
I think so. I think Senate and Mitch McConnell has shown that he wants to play some ball. He's now going to be the minority leader. But even so, they could still, there's so many different ways where Republicans could still obstruct Biden's agenda. But I think we're going to go back to a place where, not everybody loved it, but where Congress was somewhat functioning and there was deal making and things were going on. And so I do think they will. I mean, it might not be exactly what the president wants or the Democrats want, but I think something will happen.
Tony, wanted to get your thoughts on the impeachment trial as it goes forward. Of course, the House has impeached President Trump for a second time. He's going to be tried in the Senate. Is there any likelihood, do you see any scenario whereby the Senate could in fact convict Donald Trump of the charges against him for impeachment?
There's a lot of politics at play here, and nothing is ever what it seems. It's always the tip of the iceberg that you see in politics, that top 20% with the other 80% below the water. There may, in fact, be members of the Republican United States Senate who are thinking about, here's our opportunity, here's our chance, let's get him gone. Let's add to the piling on of Donald Trump to remove him as a political powerhouse amongst Trumpers, not so much just the Republican Party. What Brian and I would both be familiar with right now is that 2022 is already on. We're polling already in congressional districts. We're looking already at next competitions for the United States Senate. Well, that's something that's going on in the minds of a few of those senators as well. Does it benefit them to support Trump as things unfold in the next week or two? More video, more facts, more to be known about what actually just happened at the Capitol, who may have been involved, could there have been Republican members of the Congress involved in what happened, et cetera. As all that rolls out, that narrative is going to drive what's on the minds of a lot of these United States senators who are Republican. It may be a situation where their party benefits by impeachment, by taking the indictment of the House and making it a conviction in the Senate.
I was going to say, just as important as the conviction is getting these folks on record. Right. So maybe, they might not have enough votes, but, I think that a lot of folks also think we don't know what else Trump has done. And over the next few years, more stuff is going to come out. And so now if you decided not to vote to convict this man and 2 or 3 more devastating things come out, they'll run an ad against you. And so Republican senators have to really think about what their vote is going to mean, regardless of whether or not there's as many to get him removed or, convicted, because he's going to be already gone at that point.
Tony, given your knowledge of Joe Biden as a U.S. Senator, a vice president, now president-elect, soon to be president of the United States, what qualities do you feel he exhibits that would make him the president for this time in terms of getting the country back on track, uniting the country, and getting ahead of this COVID-19 pandemic, as well as getting the economy rolling again?
It is a long career and life trial, literally by trial. So many real life issues have confronted this man, from the loss of a wife and a child, from the loss later in later years of his son, Beau. He's been through things. He's been there also with Barack Obama for a wide variety of things. The incomprehensible economic horror story of the 2008 recession, largely with Barack Obama put a lot of the responsibility on Joe Biden to get things done by consensus, to get things done with the other side of the aisle. He's been there for amazing things. I mean, he was in that Situation Room while Barack Obama and his team watched the taking of Osama bin Laden. He's been through stuff. That's what he brings to this. He's tempered. He's like a sword that's been tempered over and over and over again by fire and by the forge and the pounding of metal. He's got that. He's got that other thing, too, that we haven't seen for a while in a president, a real spiritual well-being. This guy's connected. He gets it. He understands. And I don't mean just that he goes to church every Sunday and is a true believer kind of a guy. It's actually part of his makeup, just to be kinder and gentler to other human beings. There's a compassion there that's truly real with Joe Biden.
Ryan, as we know, the Democrats will now control Congress with the victories in Georgia and the Senate races there. The Democrats regain control of the Senate with Kamala Harris casting that deciding vote if need be. Democrats in charge of the House now, and we'll have a Democratic president. How will Democrats controlling Congress now impact the initiatives and the vision and agenda of Joe Biden as he moves forward? Is he going to be able to get everything he's proposing passed now because the Democrats control Congress?
No, probably not. But I think they're gonna look and try to get as much done as they can. You know, Joe Manchin's going to be a household name soon because, you know, just like there's Romney's on the right, there's Joe Manchin's on the left, and you know he doesn't always vote as a Democrat votes, and it's such a razor thin margin. So one or two Democrats here, just like a Murkowski or a Collins or a Romney there, can change the makeup of the Senate when it comes to voting. So, you know, this idea that everybody votes lockstep all the time isn't necessarily true. And so with that said, you know, if they don't want to repeat the problems of the past when Barack Obama did have a majority in the Senate and the House and didn't get certain things done, because, you know, chances are, you know, it's a pendulum and it swings. So he's probably not going to have it for all 4 years where the Senate and the House are controlled by Democrats. So they're going to try to get the important things done soon.
Tony, what are your feelings about the first 100 days in office for Joe Biden? He has indicated he wants to move the COVID vaccines forward at a much faster pace, trying to get 100 million doses out there in the first 100 days of his office. But what do you think realistic Joe Biden's going to be able to accomplish in his first 100 days in office?
I think it's an aggressive first 100 days. And he's already, as I mentioned earlier, begun the messaging, begun the vernacular on what he wants to do in these 100 days with the speech that he gave on Thursday night. 25 minutes of facts, 25 minutes of definitive guidelines and timelines and actions as to what he wants to do. A little bit reminding me to a degree of Babe Ruth, kind of pointing out in the corner as to where he was going to hit that home run. Does he hit that home run? I think we're at a point right now, we'd be happy with a great double or a great triple from him. But he is making it very clear. These first 100 days are as important as FDR's first 100 days. I'm seeing some historical correlation there. Thinking, too, from what we've already heard before an inaugural speech on Thursday of this week from Biden, that it is almost reminiscent of a combination of FDR, JFK, and a little bit of Ronald Reagan's inaugural speeches. We're hearing that push that it's bad. I'm telling you it's bad, and I know it's going to get worse, but we're in this one together. There's hope. Help is coming. I don't think I've heard him say that less than 10 times a day somewhere in America in some media format. That concept that there's hope, that there's help, that is imperative and important. That's great to accomplish that, but more so now, victories in 100 days that can be pointed to. I think it's going to be possible for him to pull some of this off.
You can see more of Ray Hershel's interview with Tony Cignoli and Ryan McCollum in an extended digital exclusive online at nepm.org/connectingpoint. It was 11 years ago in May of 2009 when the commissioner of the Massachusetts Department of Conservation and Recreation decided that due to budget restraints, the Windsor State Forest could no longer function as an employee-operated park. That all changed in 2020 when the organization was able to raise the money needed to reopen the state forest, whose history dates back nearly 100 years. With plans to reopen the facility in the spring of 2021, Connecting Point's Brian Sullivan headed to this remote nature preserve to take a look.
There's a place in the Berkshires where this brook and this brook converge with the east branch of the Westfield River. That seems pretty vague, seeing as they could be any number of tributaries out this way. But these waterways in particular reside on two of the more remote properties of the Department of Conservation and Recreation. Located on a winding country road in the town of Windsor, Massachusetts, is the roughly 1,700-acre tract of land known as the Windsor State Forest. Stopping by in late October of 2020, we were greeted by these signs while a number of earth-moving vehicles populated the parking lot. When we came back in December of that year, this dumpster and this backhoe were all that remained. Now, the netting and temporary fences may not be much to look at, but they represent upgrades that have been in the works since the park was shuttered due to the cost of keeping the facility staffed all the way back in 2009.
With staffing comes the amenities, the bathrooms, the contact station, the interpretive services, our ability to pick up trash. All of that went away. That's all now coming back with this project.
The good news for visitors who do make it out this way is that the forest itself never closed. Now, granted, there won't be anyone in the contact station until the work is completed sometime in the spring of 2021. And the same goes for the comfort station up this way. But for those who, like me, would like to get out and enjoy getting back to nature, it's not only open to us, there's also plenty to go around.
This part of the park runs up, it's a pretty much an uphill hike. There's a number of trails that are up in there, and it abuts the trustees of reservations property up and back. So we've got miles of wilderness behind us.
We were heading out on what's known as the Steep Bank Brook Trail. So far, it's living up to its name. And while sporting proper footwear and dressing in layers may seem like some of the more obvious things to keep in mind when hiking in the colder months, there are some other things I like to consider when heading out to woodlands that I've never been to before, regardless of the season.
Whenever I hike a trail for the first time, if given the option, I prefer taking one that has a river that runs alongside it. And I do that for a couple of reasons. For one thing, the river serves as sort of a makeshift compass. It's on my right on the way up, it's on my left on the way down. And secondly, the view is always awesome.
And while drivers passing this sign along Route 9 may confuse the name of the site for that of a Berkshire Summer Concert Series, there are those for whom the sound of rushing cascades of water is a symphony. And that concert goes on year-round.
When people talk about Windsor State Forest, they don't call it Windsor State Forest, they call it Windsor Jams because that's what they hear, that's what they think about, and that's what they see. But it's a beautiful natural waterfall that comes down through, races down through the part of it dumps off into the Westfield River, and some of it goes off and down into Pittsfield, Dalton area.
The jams may not have the 50 and 60-foot falls like some other areas in the state, but what it does feature are these dramatic, sheer granite walls, some as high as 80 feet, hovering over the flowing rapids below. Even though we drove to the falls, there are paths from the main site that visitors can take to get here. And as it stands now, it won't be long until this $1.5 million project is completed, and more visitors will be able to come here, park, hike, and recreate in what will then be a fully staffed and functioning state park for the first time in over a decade.
It has been nearly a year since the coronavirus pandemic first hit and changed life for us all. And studies have shown that communities of color have been hit particularly hard by this health crisis. Each week, the city of Holyoke is consistently listed as a high-risk community according to the state's COVID-19 map. Nayroby Rosa-Soriano, Director of Community Engagement and Resident Services at OneHolyoke CDC, spoke with me about a new grant that the organization recently received to help provide education and resources to Holyoke residents to reduce the spread and rise of COVID-19 cases in the city.
Well, the grant is awarded through the Department of Public Health and Health Resources in Action. And the goal of this grant is to be able to promote and provide education and outreach to families in, high disproportionate rated COVID diagnoses. And so we're trying to make sure that all of our families within the community, especially the Latinx and Black communities, to have resources and information that they need to be able to understand COVID, know how to be safe around this situation, and really just try to get out as much information into the community as possible.
Now, there have been a number of national reports with data showing that these minority communities are being particularly affected by COVID. Working in Holyoke with the residents as closely as you do, why do you think some of those reasons are for this disproportionate cases?
Some of the reasons are large families, the fact that Holyoke does have lots of buildings and lots of congregated areas within those buildings. And so lots of multi-families within apartments. You have grandparents, children, grandchildren all living together. I think culturally in the Latino family, we are used to, I know that for myself, we're used to coming together for different activities and different things. And, not being able to do that is a little different. And so I think that increases that rate of exposure.
What type of work is this grant going to allow OneHolyoke to do in the community?
So a lot of the work that we are planning to do is going to be a good social media and, media outlet. It's putting out key messages, the 5 key messages. It's wearing a mask. It's washing your hands consistently. It's, if you're feeling that you're sick and you have some symptoms, getting tested. It's, staying home while, you have some symptoms. It's those, 5 key messages that we're going to promote using a lot of the funding. And we're going to, get the information out there in any avenue that we can, in radio station, in local supermarkets, kind of like some of the work that OneHolyoke did with the census.
What should residents of Holyoke be on the lookout for this campaign?
We have created a new logo for this campaign where it's Holyoke Stay Safe. So you'll be seeing that badge in our social media. You'll see it on our website. We also are going to be creating a link to our website, a new kind of direction page that will have a lot of the resources and things that we're sharing on there. You'll see us in the different outreach events that we will be doing. You'll see us being able to provide some supplies and some of the information with this new logo. So look for that. Once you see that logo, that's part of this grant and trying to get that information out there and share it with your family members and share it with other community organizations so that, we all have one place to know where a lot of this information for Holyoke is going to be.
And what are some of the resources that will be available to community members through this grant?
Some of the resources that we are looking into having are, face masks and gloves and, face shields and goggles and cleaning and disinfecting things and just really trying to keep our city and our residents with as much supplies as possible to be able to be safe around each other, whether it's they're in the own household or whether it's at work or, in their buildings. And so just really being able to get as many things to the residents of Holyoke as possible.
Back in August, the Springfield Museums issued a community call for portraits to be featured in a regional exhibit titled This Is Us Regional Portraiture Today. The exhibit features 53 artworks from artists from across the Connecticut River Valley and Northern Connecticut, and it is currently on display at the Damore Museum of the Fine Arts at the Springfield Quadrangle. Connecting Point producer Dave Fraser spoke with 3 artists whose work is part of the exhibit, as well as the museum's curator, Maggie North, to find out more.
The first time I put my hands in it, I took a Ceramics 1 class, and I knew it was like love.
I think more than ever, art will always be responsible for highlighting our times and kind of marking our times.
I think starting freshman year of high school, that's when I really became more serious with art, and I'd start doing it pretty much every single day. And that's when I realized that art was something I really liked to do.
3 artists, all with different backgrounds and experiences, joined several others to showcase their artwork in the This Is Us Regional Portraiture Today exhibit at the Springfield Quadrangle's Damore Art Museum.
This Is Us Regional Portraiture Today was inspired by a larger exhibition, the Outwin American Portraiture Today, which is on view at the Damore Museum of Fine Arts in our Wheeler and Barn galleries. We thought, why not, while highlighting national portraiture, also highlight the contemporary regional portraiture right here in Western Massachusetts and also in Northern Connecticut.
Submissions ranged from photography, paintings, sculptures, drawings, and more, all focused on similar themes: human connection, political climates, and social events. Terry Gibson is a self-taught street photographer who lives in Holyoke. He says his work explores the neighborhoods and communities whose residents are predominantly black and brown.
I chose the image of a young man that is standing in the center of a crowd, and there is a woman's hands across his chest. He's looking on into a demonstration, into a speaker, the response that I would like to hear is that folks are aware that young people are in the crowd. And so that's being mindful of the example that you're setting at the protest, right? So you could be angry and be mad, and rightly so, but you also have to be aware that there are young people out here that are watching along, and this is our future. So it's really what I wanted the image to be about.
The open call for portraiture began back in August, and the museum received 65 submissions. 23 of the pieces are displayed on the museum walls, and the others are featured on a digital slideshow. Wynn Dromey is a senior at Longmeadow High School. Her acrylic on canvas is a portrait of her friend Sandra, who, according to Dromey, represents the strength and determination within a community.
During quarantine, that's when the Black Lives Matter movement became really prevalent. And my friend Sandra actually started a peaceful protest for the Black Lives Movement. And I think that just kind of made me realize, like, wow, like Sandra is such an incredible, powerful person. And that definitely solidified my plan of submitting this portrait for the competition.
In the spring of 2020, when the COVID pandemic forced many businesses to close, Marianne Benz found herself alone in her studio in Holyoke. She said she turned inward for inspiration and created this three-dimensional clay piece.
A lot of the work that I do has, I want to say, a lot of content, and sometimes it's heavy, but I try to make it so that there's a connection, that people can have a connection. Oftentimes people will ask me what this is about, what does this mean? And I like to ask them, what does it mean to you? You know, what is it? What's the connection you have to it? If you go and you look at work and you think, oh, that blue is pretty or that green is pretty, that's a kind of a connection, but when it hits you inside, that means a lot.
The exhibit runs through May 2nd of 2021 at the D'Amour Museum of Fine Arts in Springfield.
That does it for Connecting Point for January 15th, 2021. Remember, you can always find the stories that you saw tonight, as well as exclusive features, digital-only content, and more online anytime at nepm.org/connectingpoint. And please join us again next Friday night at 6 right here on New England Public Media for more stories of the people, places, and ideas that matter most to Western New England. I'm ZYDALIS BAUER. Be safe and have a good night.
Support for Connecting Point is provided by our contributing viewers.
The siege of the Capitol, fueled by the president's own words.
You'll never take back our country with weakness.
The roots of rage run deep.
We could see it coming.